Greetings, all you Jackson Jennets, and welcome to your daily dose of donkey with Ginger. It's time for some Steelers talk. It's your boy, the Viking Donkey. What is there to talk about? What's going to go on this week? Well, let's start off. Some big news for Steeler Nation. Potential replacement for Stephon Tuitt, maybe sliding into the middle in case Alualu's not 100%. Who knows? But the signing of a defensive lineman that seemed like it might be something that's still left to do. That's Larry Ogunjobi. Has played for Cleveland, spent last year with Cincinnati, had his best year, 16 games. I think it was 7.5 sacks. A good fill-in guy, potential starter, definitely. He started around. He's been a good player in both stops. Really played well last year for Cincinnati. Injured his foot in Week 17 or their first playoff game and didn't play after that. And the foot injury is the reason he didn't sign a 3-year, more lucrative contract with, I believe it was the New York Jets. Maybe it was the Giants. I think it was one of those New York teams. He had a deal in place, and that didn't happen this offseason because of an injury. He's a guy who has definitely put a presence out there, has helped the teams he's been on. Former third-round pick, maybe not the biggest in name, but definitely starter quality, high-end backup quality guy. I'm not sure who exactly this pushes off on the depth chart. Doesn't mean that the defense line's going to stay one deeper and they'll keep one extra than they were planning on before to keep the guys they wanted and keep him. We'll see what happens. Is he healthy? Is he going to be the same player he was? Because we've seen slight injuries just derail careers before. I'm looking back, let's say Lamar Woodley, for example, great player, having a great career, gets a hamstring injury, loses a little bit of that explosiveness, gains a little weight, and then all of a sudden, very much just a backup player. Hopefully this injury isn't anything. Clearly the Steelers, when they brought him in for a tryout, thought he was good enough to give a contract to. That's where we sit. I like the signing as of today, not knowing how his health is going to fit. He fits the frame, the 6 foot, 300-pound frame. He has the size to play, I guess, technically with the way we play the nose now, to play both the nose and defensive tackle position. Not sure where they're going to use him more. We'll have to see some tape on him actually playing in a 3-4 scheme instead of a 4-3 scheme because he's always played a 4-3 defensive tackle. But in a Steelers system, is that going to slide him inside to the nose or outside to the end, or I guess what we call the defensive tackle position? We have to wait to see that. I'm very interested to see where he lines up in preseason and to see if he looks as explosive as he did last year for Cincinnati. He was a big part of helping the Cincinnati defensive ends be able to get off because he was putting pressure up right through the middle. Be really curious to see how well he looks early in the preseason, to see how far along he is from recovering from his injury. But all in all, I have to say, good move. I believe he was a guy that was mentioned in my part, not as a guy that I was really, really hoping for, but a guy who is a name that would have fit in there as a veteran guy who has the experience and lets the Steelers, maybe younger guys, if they're into the role, go into it. But if they're not ready, not have to be forced into playing like they were last year and really got exposed. So all in all, I give that a really, really good grade. Let's call it a B+ if he is healthy, and I'm assuming he is because the other teams that failed him would have gave the same test the Steelers did. So a couple months later, the injury's probably healed and they saw what they liked on the tryout. So I have to assume he looks more like Larry Ogunjobi from last year than he does the injured one from the end of the year. So definitely got to go with a B+ right now because otherwise it's going to look really bad for the front office if they signed broken parts. Let's be honest here, because there's plenty of healthy defensive nose type of guys out there that they could have signed. So better be right on this one. Now, what should we talk about after that? Because that's about the only Steelers news we got going on. Oh, I got it. We're doing X Factors. So this week we're going to talk about the defensive X Factor and who do I believe is the key to this defense. Is it a superstar playing up to level? Is it Cam Hayward, TJ Watt playing up to their levels? Is it Tyson Alualu proving he's healthy? Is it Chris Wormley taking another step forward like he did last year, but taking another one to be the huge replacement for Stephon Tuitt? Is it Alex Highsmith developing into a better pass rusher than what we've seen? Is it any of the people who are involved in the pass rush game? Is it someone in the secondary stepping up, whether it be Akila Witherspoon, Wallace, Sutton, Minka Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, if he's a starter, Kazee if he's a starter. Is it the new addition of Miles Jack? Is it Devin Bush coming back into it? I think the front seven's going to be the front seven. In terms of pass rush ability, I think you're going to see the sacks because that's what the Steelers do. They always put up the sacks. So I don't really think a guy who's a pass rush expert is ever going to be the X factor for the Steelers because rushing the passers, something they do. Last year, the problem was got ran on a lot and couldn't stop it. So you didn't get to see guys like Minka play to their full potential. So that means it has to be someone who's filling the blocks and someone who's run stopping. Now, I could be like, maybe the X factor is TJ Watt actually playing to stop the run this year instead of just being the best pass rusher in the world because he doesn't care if a running back's coming out, which is true, but that's what makes TJ Watt. I don't think that's it at all. I think last year, the biggest problem in the run stop wasn't Terrell Edmonds. When he came up, he played fine. The bigger problem was he was too often put into the position to make the play because the two guys playing in the middle were terrible. Both Joe Schobert and Devin Bush were terrible. So I think the X factor for this year's defense, it's going to come down to stopping the run. And based off last year, it's going to come down because the defensive line play should be a little better this year as more depth has been added and clearly more depth has been added. A third-round draft pick and Ogunjobi signing adds more depth to that team than it had last year. Hopefully, Alu stays healthy. That means it's going to come down to can the linebackers make the tackle. Last year, Schobert was out of position a lot. Devin Bush was out of position a lot. I think with Miles Jack, you're going to get an improvement, definitely off what Schobert brought. But I don't think he's the X factor because I don't think he is going to be, at this point of his career, the absolute monster difference maker that someone else on this team has the potential to be. And that's a guy the Steelers traded up to draft. That is Devin Bush, who showed so much potential in his rookie season. He was in the backfield. He was intercepting footballs. Did he look lost on coverage a little bit of time? Yes. But he was able to make a lot of the coverage plays that we haven't seen a Steelers linebacker probably ever make. Maybe you could go back to James Ferrier's having a little bit of coverage skills, Larry Foote, but when you think of Steelers linebackers, you think of the great downhill guys, the Lavon Kirklands, the Lawrence Timmons, even Vince Williams for what he did. I'll go modern era ones because the Steelers have only been the 3-4 for the modern era stuff. So you think of these big downhill middle linebacker types. Even Ferrier was just a downhill tackler guy. Devin Bush had the ability to get into that backfield with speed. He showed it when he was healthy as a rookie. He was making plays in the backfield. If you put on the tape last year, he looked either a half step slow or like he wasn't sure what he was doing. I'm not sure if that's because he was paired with a guy like Schobert and they were struggling. I don't know if that's because offensive guards were getting too easily off of our initial block of the defensive lineman and going upfield and hitting him. But either way, I think the X factor for whether this defense is going to be a good one like it was last year, an elite one like it has the potential to be, or a bad one is going to be really firmly on these middle linebackers. And I think the guy who's going to have to step up if this team is to be elite and is going to be the X factor on what level this team is in Devin Bush. Because there's not another linebacker on this roster, and Miles Jack is a great linebacker, but there is not another linebacker on this roster that can do the things Devin Bush, when he was healthy, is capable of doing. Is he healthy? Good question. Has he got the confidence back to play the way he played before and look like he's actually just out there reacting instead of thinking? Because if you put on the tape from his rookie year and put on last year, it looks like he's thinking. He always seems to be slower to start moving, slower to do this. And I understand why, because if you put on the tape, there are plays where Joe Schobert goes way out of position. Like Devin Bush is playing the right side, and Joe Schobert somehow loops over top of him and breaks outside right. When you have a linebacker not where he's supposed to be and the trust isn't there, people are going to start thinking. Plus, he looked a little bit slow just based off of injury recovery, which is to be expected. And I said it all of last year. We can judge him as hard as we want, but this is the year you need to see from Devin Bush. What does Devin Bush really have? I think we've seen flashes. I think if this team's going to take a step to the next level defensively, he has to be that guy because he is the guy who's going to let the Steelers possibly stay in a more base-type package and stop the run if he's able to cover running backs in that. Otherwise, you're looking at one of these new safeties we added or a guy from any of the guys from last year who played as the box safety when we went to nickel and dime packages, getting more and more time. And whenever we put that package on the field, teams were able to just run the ball down our throat. That's why I think Devin Bush is the X factor, because he is the one who can prevent teams from being able to take advantage of us having to put a safety in a linebacker position because our linebackers can't cover. Devin Bush is the one who has the skill set to be that elite linebacker, to be Devin White, for example, for Tampa Bay. He's never going to be maybe, because he's not as big as Devin White. He's just as fast, though, and he has just the same ability to be a 3-down changing game type of linebacker with his ability to do coverage. Does that mean he's not going to give up plays? Of course, every linebacker who covers running backs, slot receivers, tight ends gets burned from time to time. But Devin Bush has the ability to be that guy who's going to get interceptions, who's going to make plays in the backfield. Those negative plays that influence games, Devin Bush is the most likely guy who is going to change what this team can be. Yes, TJ Watt is clearly, maybe Cam Hayward are the biggest names and the biggest players on this team. But the X factor isn't about a guy who gets the job done. It's about the guy who can change the game the most. And yes, I know TJ influences the way offensive lines have to play and teams have to game plan. You have those guys, but then someone has to be able to just change what you're able to do on a defense. And TJ Watt's not going to go cover a linebacker and give you the ability to be deceptive. I think if Devin Bush can be the Devin Bush from the rookie year, he gives the Steelers this absolute ability to be deceptive, because you don't know if he's going to come on a blitz. You don't know if he's going to just make all the tackles in the middle. You don't know if he's going to be able to intercept a football. And more than anything, the X factor on this team needs to be someone who can stop the run, because if we cannot stop the run, you saw what happened last year to this defense when it was exposed. It's a tough game, even against bad teams like Detroit, because the defense just gets exposed so openly. And to me, it was a mystery why anyone ever threw the ball against the Steelers once they got exposed as being weak there. And the guy I think who can change it is the middle linebacker play. Because even if the defensive line play still gets pushed up a little bit, a linebacker who can just break through the gap and make those just smack plays like Lawrence Timmons used to do can absolutely be the reason the Steelers go from good to elite to maybe contender status because of a defense. That wraps it up to me. I guess it's time to go to shout-out mode, and my shout-out has to be this week to Pitt alum who was a little bit before my time, and unfortunately, he won a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens. Not a huge fan of that, but was kind of fun to listen to as a sideline analyst for, I believe it was Fox. And that's Tony Saragusa. Good work from a former Pitt alum who worked his way from undrafted guy to Super Bowl champ, and now is a sideline analyst. Sad to hear that he passed away, I believe, at the age of 55. So shout-outs got to go to the big old Tony Saragusa. Wish nothing but peace to his family and anyone who knew him, but that's where I gotta go this week. I guess it's time to let you know I am the Viking Donkey. That's Viking_Donkey on Twitch and Twitter. Your daily dose of donkey with Ginger is the YouTube channel. Leave us a like, leave us a follow, leave us a comment. Let us know what you like. Let me know what you think about defensive X factors. Let me know if you have a better one and why it's a better one. I'd love to hear it. Always good for conversation. And hey, it's that time. Donk Nation, Steeler Nation. Getting really close to football pads. That means wave them if you got them. Here we go.